What's up guys, Coach Az here. The question I get asked all the time by beginners is, how do I turn my hips into my kick? They really struggle with this whole concept of rotating the hips round. And it comes down to three main things. So today, I want to give you 3 tips for turning your hips whilst throwing the roundhouse kick. Let's get it started. Before I get into the tips, let's understand the reason why we want to be able to do this. Similar to when you throw your cross, it's all about rotational force. It's about putting our body weight in behind the technique. So instead of just kicking with the leg, we're kicking with our entire body. And where this kick comes around into the target, that ability to rotate your hips over is what's going to allow you to put your body weight behind the kick. Now, when it comes to practicing kicks in general, I like to break it down into 3 main elements: your mobility, your ability to execute the technique itself, and your balance. So whilst the real trick to improving any technique is just to repeat it over time, to keep practicing, to keep going to the gym, to keep throwing the kick, you can actually separate these 3 elements and practice them individually to speed up the process. So let's start with looking at mobility. Now I'm going to give you a stretch that's specific for the hips today, but in reality, your issue might be that you have tight hamstrings, that you've got a tight lower back, that you've got tight glutes. There's plenty of muscles that are involved in this process, and often where you feel the tightness isn't the source of it. So I'm gonna link our 15-minute stretching routine for kicks in the description box below. You want to ensure that you're including regular mobility work in your training, especially at the end of workouts when you're nice and warm and you're already limber. Your body is very responsive to static and dynamic stretching at this point. However, for the interest of today's video and keeping it specific to this concept of turning the hips, we're going to take a look at the 90-90 stretch. All right guys, so for the 90-90 stretch, this is what you're going to need to do. One leg's going to be in front of you, and we're going for, as the name suggests, 90-degree angles. So the main angles you want to focus on is 90 degrees here at the knee and 90 degrees here at the ankle. We want to do the same at the front and then also at the back. 90 degrees here, 90 degrees here. Now I'm going to use this knee as a reference point for the stretch. So starting with 20 seconds to the outside of the leg. So I'm going to come over to this side and I'm going to start lowering myself. Now I can start by going down with my arms, eventually getting to my elbows, and if I can get to my elbows, then trying to lay my chest down to the floor. The whole time trying to maintain contact to the ground at my hip, at my knee, and at my ankle. So 20 seconds to the outside. I'll then come back up, and now I'll go straight over the knee. So same idea here. One hand either side. Start by bending the arms, get down to my elbows, and eventually folding myself flat to that leg. Back up, and then final 20 seconds, we're going to come inside the knee, so towards the foot here. Now for this one, I like to use this same side arm to pin that knee down. If I don't, I tend to find that it raises and elevates. So if you want to help keep that down, one arm just gently resting here. You can keep one hand on the foot here, and then again just leaning down onto that inside stretch for 20 seconds. So we've got 1 minute there, then we can rotate over and take the hips to the other side. Again, get your position sorted first. 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90, 90. And we do the same on the other side. 20 seconds out, 20 seconds straight over, 20 seconds to the inside. Now, a great way to test how this stretch is working for you is taking this position and rotating it. So from here, down on one side, I come up to the center and I go over to the other. Now I'm 90-90 the other way. From here to here, from here to here. The idea, of course, here is that I'm rotating my hips. So if you see right now, my hips are pointed out into this angle. As I come up and turn, my hips are now to this angle. So I've twisted and rotated up. And also, I'm trying not to use too much upper body. So I'm trying to keep my arms out of it and let my legs and hips do all of the work. From here to here. And you can just go between these 2 positions. It's a great dynamic stretch. It's very safe because we're down on the ground, and it just lets you move through these ranges of motions in the hips. Work that for a while, and then you can come back to a position and we can start doing those stretches again. All those 3 different positions, either side. Find where your tight spot is and just give that a little bit of focus. Again, this is a hip specific stretch, so we want to be stretching our hamstrings, our glutes, our lower back, working all around our legs to make sure that we've got the necessary flexibility to throw the kicks. I know it's not the most exciting answer in the world, but the reality is that most people's issues when it comes to kicking is a lack of flexibility. If you think of your body from an engineering point of view, you can understand that an engine, for example, will work well when everything is lubricated and none of the parts that shouldn't be touching each other aren't touching each other. So the same thing, your joints need to be nice and mobile, nice and loose, so that we can move through the necessary range of motion without meeting any unnecessary resistance. Let's look at the technique itself now, and I'm going to give you a great drill that really helps you get that mind-body connection when it comes to this hip rotation. For this, all you're going to need is a platform so that you can elevate your leg. The idea is you want it at a height where you could comfortably kick. Rest your leg on the platform as if you had extended out a teep or a front kick. Now the idea here is that your hips are going to be facing forward towards the platform. From here, we're going to practice rotating the hip and then resetting back to the start position. Notice here how my foot that's on the floor pivots on the ball of the foot to allow my hips to rotate. That's a really important point. If you don't open that foot, it doesn't open the hip, and that's not going to allow you to turn it over. So when you're working this drill, focus on pivoting that foot that's standing on the floor, but at the same time, bring loads of your attention into your hips. Really try to connect with the movement of this hip that's on the outside, on the kicking leg, rotating and coming over the top. Think of it like a wave crashing on a beach. You want it to come up, round and over. It's this snap movement within the hip that really allows you to develop maximum power at the point of impact. Touching back on the subject of mobility, when you're in this position, it'll also really allow you to see and feel where your tightness is. So take a moment, both in the front position and the sideways on, to see where you feel tight. Is it in the back of your leg? In which case you probably need to stretch your hamstrings and your glutes. Is it up here in the hips? In which case you need to do more of those hip stretches that I showed you with the 90-90. Is it in your lower back? If it's in your lower back, again, it's probably tight glutes and tight hamstrings pulling down on that lower back. What we're doing here is we're removing balance from the equation. So instead of just having to execute the kick as it is and worrying about standing on one leg, we've got this supported platform. So what that allows us to do is really focus on this hip rotation without worrying about how we're going to land the kick or how we're going to get back into our stance afterwards. You can think of it a little bit like learning to ride a bike. It's like riding with the stabilizers on. You can focus purely on the technique and how to get the bike moving without worrying about falling over. Finally, let's talk about balance. And this is effectively that part of learning to ride a bike where your dad slowly lets go of you from behind and you do it on your own. Or in other words, where he completely lies to you, abandons you, you turn around to see he's no longer holding you, freak out and fall flat on your face. So this time, instead of stabilizing ourselves on the kicking foot, we're going to hold on to a wall with one hand. Here, from a chambered position, so where we've got the knee raised, we're going to practice those hip rotations again. We've still got something to hold on to and balance ourselves on, so we're not worried about falling over. And again, we can just focus on that idea of rotating the hips over. Once you feel confident in that, then you can step away from the wall. You can still have your hand ready to catch it. Again, dad's ready to catch you if you fall, if you're lucky. But now we're starting to include some balance into the equation. We're working on these small stabilizing muscles in our standing leg at the ankle, the knee, and the hip that's going to allow us to focus on throwing the kick. Finally, of course, we want to convert this over to hitting a pad or hitting the bag. So then you've got to step away, you've got to ride on your own at this point and work the full kicking technique. But again, take away everything we've learned and everything we've worked on through today, that mobility stretching before and after, and making sure that we're focused on that technique of pivoting that foot on the floor and rotating that hip over. Remember the crashing wave into the bag. As I said at the start, guys, the best way to get better at kicking is to kick. Do it more often. Get on the bag, put in the reps, put in the time, and it will improve. But if you include some mobility, some technique and some balance work, I think it will accelerate the process for you. Guys, I hope this video has been helpful. If you've enjoyed it, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Subscribe. We've got new videos coming out every week. We've had loads of new subscribers recently, so welcome to the channel, and I will see you on the next one.